All right, well, hello and welcome back to Exit 45 Restorations. Today, we're going to have a little fun with the gas tank, all right? So the 64 Thunderbirds has just your standard gas tank in it. The problem I have is I'm going to be running electronic fuel injection on this engine. So I need to convert this tank to an EFI tank. All right, so let's get in there and let's get it done. All right, let's go. Up, Exit 45. Thank you, Ryan. I love it. All right, so here's the tank. There's Pepper. And back to the tank. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy here. It's just a standard tank that comes in these. You got your inlet. Looks like we got a fuel drain right there. And you got your sending unit up here. Otherwise, the tank looks in pretty good shape. A little bit of surface rust, but nothing terrible. Once we get all this out, we'll take a look inside and see what it looks like inside. So first thing is, let's get this off of here. All right, just got a lock ring. I'm sure most of you have been through this before, so you know, just knock them off like that. And there you go. There you go. And it comes out. And how do you like that clamp? Looks like some kind of baling wire they used to put it on there, and it works. Looks like we're missing a float, so I assume that's down in the tank somewhere. All right, let me get a flashlight and let's see if we can't see down in there. All right, guys, so I'm trying to see if I can get you to see in there. It's really hard for me to know if you guys can see this or not, but that tank looks really good inside there. It's just, there's just a light coat of varnish on the walls of the tank, and man, it looks good in there. What I did not find was the float. I have no idea where that went, but it is not in this tank. Anyway, looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and put something in here to clean this up and see if we can't get all that varnish off of there and just have a nice, good, clean tank to go back together with. All right, let me get that done. Got it soaking right now with some acetone in there. See if I can't get some of the varnish that's in there out. All right, so all I'm really trying to do here is get the old crusty fuel that's in there. There's no rust or anything like that. It's just that fuel's turned to varnish in there, and it's just a really thin coat around the tank. So we're gonna just let it sit for a little while, shake it up every now and then, but I'm not having to fight rust. So I don't need to put rocks or anything in there to break all that loose, because there's the tank's actually really clean inside, so not bad for sitting for 40 years. All right, we're gonna let it sit for a minute. All right, we've been sloshing this tank around for a while, and it's looking pretty gross now, so I think we got it cleaned out. So let's take a look at what comes out. Oh yeah. There's a lot of varnish in there. Huh. Okay. All right. So we'll let this thing dry out good before we start working on it, but we got we got the varnish out of it. There was a thin layer of varnish all throughout the tank. So I think we got it. All right. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this kit that I got to turn this tank into an EFI tank. And this is an EFI conversion kit from a company called Tanks. I got this off of Summit, and the reason I got this is because there's a lot of other, stuff you can get out there with all the, you got this here, and it's got everything you need, all the pumps on it and everything. The problem is what it doesn't have is it doesn't have this right here. This is your sump, and it keeps a bowl full of fuel for your pump, and it's not good to run these pumps out of fuel like that with the electronic fuel system. So none of those have that. This one does. It's very universal. You can pretty much put it anywhere. So that's what we're going to do. So let's get started. All right, so we're just about ready to cut into this thing, but let me walk you through the process that got us to where we're at. This tank is sitting exactly how it will go into the car. This is the front side. Over here's the rear side. Filler neck goes over there, and this is your sending unit. Okay, so it's sitting just like it's going to go in the car, just like this. I've got to come up with a place for this. Now, this typically is a design that goes in from the top. To do that, I would have to cut a hole in the car to fit that, to have that space, because this fits tight up against the car. I didn't really like that idea, because then I'd have hoses coming in the car, then I'd have to find a way out of the car, and I wasn't really thrilled about that. So then I thought, well, let me put a hole here. I can come in from the side. Then I could cut and bend this metal so it bends at a 90. And then that goes on, and it would still end up at the bottom of the tank. Let me see if I can. So if this goes in like this, okay, it's in like that. Now I have to bend, stay still. Then I would have to bend this, right, maybe like right here, down at a 90, so it would go straight down to the bottom. Then it would go down to the bottom of the tank, and then the sump could go on there, and it would all work. I mean, it would certainly work. Just a minute. However, he got the locking mechanism, and the gasket here is cork, and I'm just afraid all that constant pressure of fuel up against this is going to eventually seep through that seal. And I could put some rubber sealant on there, and hopefully that would hold up. But so we got the tank under the car. We got to looking around to see. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so the tank sits right in this area right here. You can basically see the shape of the tank right there. There's your filler neck hole right there. Now, here's the deal. If I'm gonna go through the top of the tank, that means right in this opening here, I've got to put another big hole for that, the pump to be able to come up and the tank still come up tight to the car. I have to cut a hole for that clearance. Then my concern there with that was, now I've got all my fuel lines and everything coming up into the trunk. And I didn't really like that, because then I'm like, well, how do I get them out of the trunk? Now I'm cutting more holes in the car, and I didn't really want to do that. But when I was looking underneath there, I'm like, well, there's the hole where the electrical already runs down to the sending unit on the tank. And there's actually plenty of room for me to run all my plumbing back out of the car through there. So I'll just come up here, I'll drill a hole, big hole there. The tank will come up tight. I'll have all my fittings right there. And then I can just run them out and then down that hole that's right there. So I can it's just a short little run over to there. And I think that's going to work really good. And that keeps my unit up top of the tank like they've designed it to be. So I think that's where we're going to go with it. I think we're going to put a hole here. I'm going to find a way I'll come up with a way to make sure that that's sealed from the outside around around that opening. And then we'll just run the hoses back out because there's already a path for it, and the electrical all needs to go right on out there. So I like it. I think it'll work. So, okay. So let's get started on this process. We've got to start making some holes, and my helper's sitting here doing nothing. So I got to get something going here. It's costing me good money having him just sit here. All right, guys, we're gonna get set up and start drilling a hole in this tank. All right, and then we'll bring you along the way. Okay, so this is where we've chosen to put the tank. And one of the things, the first step that they tell you to do is once you've got your spot where you're going to put it, is to hold this on there and just mark your spot. So there's where we're going to cut. So now the next thing we'll do is we're going to go ahead and get the very expensive hole saw that I bought, and we will get ready to go ahead and cut this out. All right, so we'll just get it lined up here, and we're going to just start working our way through this thing slowly. Battery. No turning back now. All right, so I'm just going to take some, this is probably an old sheet of 80 grit. And I'm just going to go around and deburr the hole, mostly so I don't bleed. Okay, so we got our hole cleaned up, deburred. Now what we're going to do is we want to get ready to drill our pilot holes for mounting this. But we have to make sure our orientation is correct. They want the sump here running this way or this way. So in order to do that, because we're going to be drilling off of this piece here. So what we had to do is line this thing up on here. And if you can see, we made marks on both sides, so we would know that which way this was facing. So now, if I take that off, I know if I make my mark here and here going this way, then that will be facing this way or this way, just like they want. I hope that makes sense. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to get a clamp, and we're going to clamp this down, and we're going to do pilot holes in each one of these holes, and then we'll pull this off, and then we'll drill them all to full size. All right, so the next step is we've got this locked into place now, and what we're going to do is we're going to go around all of these and mark each hole so we can take this off and then come back through and drill. So you can see here all the marks. So all we need to do now is get those drilled out. All right, let's try this with a better bit. Much better. Ready? Okay. Next step is cleaning the tank. So I've already gone through it once with like an acetone just to get the varnish off of it. But there was still a lot of sediment down in the bottom of the tank. So I want to get it a good, really just a good cleaning. We also need to get out the metal shaving, so that's what we're doing right now. I'm gonna rinse it out real good, and then we're gonna flush out everything and just try and get as clean as we can before we move on. Okay, so just a little lessons learned. Here's a center punch. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes that I have to pull just a little bit in different directions. And that's after I just finished cleaning the entire tank. So, here's a center punch. Don't be like me. All right, let me get that cleaned up. Okay, so let me just show you where we're at. We got the ring. There's a ring with all the threaded spots on there. Is up underneath here now, and I got a coat of sealant on there. That's just going to be to hold it in place. You have a choice. You can either do this, try to get something to hold in place like a sealant, or you can take and tack weld all the way around here, but I've already cleaned this tank up twice, and I don't want to weld in here and have to clean the tank again. So I'm going to zip all these in real quick along here. That'll hold that up nice and tight. Let that sealant, get a good hold while we're putting the pump together. And then we should be able to pull them screws out. Hopefully that'll stay there long enough for me to slide the pump in and then put the screws back in and then tighten it all up. All right, just real quick check in. You can see I've got the screws all cinched down. You can see my squeeze out. So we're going to let that sit. And now we're going to go ahead and get started on putting the pump together so that as soon as we're ready to slide that all the way in here and then secure it, hopefully this will be set up enough where that ring plate underneath there will stay. Again, you could just weld that, and if it was me and I was reading ahead enough and understanding what was going to happen enough, before I cleaned the tank, I would have made sure all my holes lined up and worked, and then that this was tacked in, and then I would clean my tank. Just a heads up for you. All right? All right, let me get set up. We're going to build that pump now. All right, so the next thing we need to do is measure the depth of the tank from basically the top of this to the bottom of the tank there, and we are at 14 and a half. All right, so let's take that measurement. Let's go back to the bench. Okay, so let's just show how this is going to work. So we've got this lined up with our 14 and a half. And then you come down and you can see we're shy in this. So this system on this tank is not going to reach the bottom. It just limits the fuel availability that we're going to have. But what we're going to do is we are going to take this sump here and we are going to try and attach it. So you can see here, there's the hole that goes into one of these slots. What we're going to do is we're going to probably put a new hole a little bit higher up, and we're going to put a hole over here, and we're going to lower this sump as far down as we can get it, like that. And then you can see, then if we can do that, we're only about an inch from the bottom, and that is acceptable. Okay, so that's just understand if our tank was shallower, let's say our tank was 10 inches, then we would have to cut here just above that 10 inches, give yourself about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch off, and then put this in wherever that's at, okay? But in our case, we're going to try to extend it as far as we can because we have a deep tank. All right, let's show you where we're at. So we got that in, and what I did, instead of drilling holes and going back, since we went off script, I went ahead and just self-tapped some screws in there, and there you go. There's our sump. You can see the self-tappers are back there. All right, so we've got our fuel inlet and return. So, well, inlet would be, supply and return. And these are really important at this point. You want to get these clocked in the direction you want your lines to go. So you need to take this to your tank, orient it to the car, figure out which way you want to feed your lines. In my case, I got them pointing right where I want them to go, and then to go down the opening in the trunk that goes out to the fuel sending unit. So these are clocked exactly like I want them. That should send the lines and the fuel and everything where I want it. So just a heads up, make sure these are clocked where you want them, and you should be good, but you have to make sure that happens. So now we need to get our fuel vent and rollover vent on here. So I got that right here. So we'll go ahead and get that on there, and then we'll have that. Now we're going to go ahead and switch down and get up underneath here. We're going to get our fuel pump made in the USA. Look at that. How about that? I'm trying to remember what brand pump this is. But there's the part number there. Autocraft maybe? I don't know. I don't know what it is. Anyway, we're going to get this installed. All right, that's next. All right, so we're set up. I'm going to walk you through this process real quick before I actually do it. So we're now going to be setting up the pump in the housing here, and there are some specific lengths and orientations that need to be maintained when we do this. So one of the things we're going to worry about here is the pump needs to be oriented like this. So you have your outlet of the pump is facing to the back of this fitting or this assembly. And then when you put your sock on at the bottom, it needs to be oriented this way so that the long end is facing toward the front of this assembly. Okay, so that's the orientation of those things. And then once you get this in here, you're going to have that sitting like that, and you got that height. Then you're going to measure from here up to the center barb, which is your fuel supply, with this hose that they've given you, which looks like we're going to be possibly a little bit short. So I may have to get my own line for this. And then on this barb here, your return right here, they have this white line, okay? And it's going to be too short because if you remember, we've extended ours all the way down. This was never designed to be this tall. So I'm having to improvise a little bit because of that. And the return line that they give you should be within an inch of the bottom here. And you can see we're pretty short. However, I have a line that I bought specifically for the return line before I bought this kit. There you go. And it fits right on down in there. So we are going to use that as our return line. And then we also have to put this sleeve goes on the pump. Okay. So that is the initial setup that we need to take care of. So I'm going to work on that right now. We're going to get our measurement from here down, make sure we're an inch off the bottom. We're going to make sure that the measurement we have here, this sits right down at the bottom of the sump. And then once we have all that done and established, we're going to go through and start getting this installed and secured in here. And then we'll be ready to go to the tank. All right. All right. So if you can see, we have this all set and to length, and just I deviated from what I told you because I had to. I had to go back to the white line for the return because the line that they gave me, again, we made our distance a lot farther than what they were, this kit was meant for. And so the line that they sent me was too short. So I just used my line that I was going to use for my return, swapped it over to the supply line, and then put theirs on. Even though it doesn't reach down into the bottom here, that's okay. It's still pointing into the sump, and that's going to be just fine. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to secure this into this system. And one of the things that you do is you got a saddle here. We'll bolt that in right there. And that once we get that bolted in, then we have these really large ties, zip ties, that if you can see the opening right there and right there, that this zip tie goes through and will hold the pump to this back wall here. Okay. And then we're going to plug in our electrical connector, and then these two spots up here are where these will come through, and then you can tighten that down, and then you'll have your wire sticking up through, and then this pump assembly will be ready to install in the tank. Okay. So let me get all that accomplished, and then I will bring you back when I have it. Well, we did it. We are fully assembled. I just don't know what else needs to be done. I think we're good to go. All right, I guess we're going to clean up the area, and we're going to bring the tank back up here and see if we can't install this. All right, so now we're going to take these screws out, and hopefully that ring underneath there stays. All right, so that's the last screw coming out. And look at that. The ring's holding, so we don't have to worry about that. So, okay, let's get set up and we're going to put the pump in. All right, so we've got the cork gasket on, thin layer of some sealant on there, and then we stuck it down. And now we're going to go ahead and carefully install this pump into the tank. There we go. Now we just need to get a couple of these started to make sure that ring doesn't fall in the tank, and we have to start all over. Don't want to push down hard and then push the ring off. So this is going to be tricky.
Gotta work through the gasket.
Yep. Okay, give me the gun. All right, we're trying pretty hard to be very careful and not push down while we're trying to screw these and get them started, because if we do, we'll end up pushing that lock ring underneath there. But we don't have to worry about that. We got one to start, so the rest of them will... Can you loosen that so we can get the rest of them? Oh, that's good. All right. The rest of these we should be able to just run down. All right, so now we're going to put on the rest of these and we should be good. Okay, got them all started and we can zip it all down and move on. All right, let me show you what we got. Look at that. We now have an EFI ready tank. All right, we'll spin this around and see if we can't get our sending unit in, and then the tank will be done. Okay, so we have our new sending unit, and one of the things that we're going to have to figure out on this, we'll worry about that a little later. I'm not worried about that just yet, but we don't need this anymore because this is no longer going to be our supply line. So we're going to have to figure out what we want to do there, how to cap this off, so to speak. So we'll figure that out. But yeah, I can't leave it like it is. So we'll figure out some way to do that. But anyway, pretty self-explanatory. These aren't too terribly difficult. So you've got the sending unit itself. Then we have the rubber gasket. And then we have our lock ring. All right. So first thing, let's get our sealing ring on there. All right. Then you're going to want to get all of this in here. Before I do that, let me just really quick make sure. Okay, so our EFI tank is over on this side. We're working over here, and I want to make sure that when this goes on, it's not going to interfere. The lock rings, it's going to go like this, and it's going to move, and that's going that way. Okay, so we don't have any interference between this and the EFI pump. I just wanted to be doubly sure on that. And now's the time to try and figure out if this is where we want it. So there's full, and then all the way down. It's pretty close to the bottom, and that's pretty close to the top. So I think we're going to be okay as far as our, you know when you get into a car and you fill it up and you get in there and it only shows half. Well, this is why. So we want to make sure that this has the full range of motion, and it represents top of the tank and it represents bottom of the tank, and this one does. Okay. And then the fun part, keeping the rubber gasket in place while I try to get this. This thing is always a pain. Come on. Oh, no. Stay in there, gasket. Don't move. All right. Come on. There's one tab. Where's the other tab? Come on, tab. There it goes. All right. Now we're in. We're locked. All right. And then this is going to go on. All right. So I'll bring you in a little bit closer. Okay. So you see this part of the tank here, and then this tab, there's 3 of those. What you want to do is you want to make sure you're locked into all 3 of them. And then what we're going to do is take a screwdriver, and we're going to tap this until we seat all the way up against these little flares or whatever you want to call them, but they're just little stops. And once we do that, we'll know it's locked. Okay? So let me get a screwdriver and see if we can't get that locked. There it goes. I just heard it click. And now you can see they're all locked in. I'm going to tap this one over here just a little bit more because it looks like... There it goes. All right. That's in. All right, guys. There it is. Isn't that nice? We are now EFI equipped, and our tank is basically, at this point, ready to go in with the exception of a few things. We need to get our fittings in here, and we need to cap this off. And so when I get ready to lay in the fuel system on the Thunderbird, this will be part of that. So we're going to coat the tank, get our fittings in, and get all our lines running and install the tank. That'll all be one video where we're basically installing the fuel system. This was converting a standard tank to an EFI tank, and we got it done. So not bad, guys. Okay, so
Looks good.
yep. Say bye, Dad. Say bye. You're not going to say bye? All right, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. It's been a lot of fun, and we got it done. And so now we're going to get ready to install that fuel system at some point. I'm not exactly sure, but it is part of the rear end. We're trying to get all the tail lights and the bumper and all that, the deck lid and all those things on. That's kind of the push right now. So getting this tank ready to install was important because I'd rather install the tank before I put the deck lid on, because it's just easier to get into all those places without having to fight the deck lid. So like, subscribe, share, all those good things. You guys have been great with that. Let's keep it going. I am that close. 500 is like, I can smell it. It's right there. So help me out. Let's get there. If you're watching still, that's pretty awesome. I like that. But don't leave without liking and subscribing, okay? All right. I'll see you on the next video.